Awesome. So, hey, folks, it's Blair here. Today on the Year Ones, we're chatting with Daniella Okezie, or Danny. And in her Year One, Danny works as an account executive at FCB, which is one of the largest global advertising agency networks. And it's part of the bigger Interpublic Group. So, if you're interested in what life is like working in big time advertising and doing award winning work, then this episode is for you. I suppose aside those distractions, get ready how these insights and tips will help you. And let's welcome Danny by asking the dreaded "Tell us about yourself" question.
Wow, that's a great intro. Tell us about yourself. Okay, I forget what I wrote ahead of time, but
Uh-oh.
I try not to start with what I do though. But yes, I do work as an account executive at FCB, marketing and advertising agency. But I am a sister, a daughter, an auntie, and I love people. I'm very interested in just how people work and what they do. I actually studied a psychology for my undergrad, and I did digital media marketing at George Brown as my postgrad. So I'm always curious about people and why they do what they do, and just like how to make relationships better in general. I would say that's a nice little thing about me, that it's not just focused on my work. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, maybe making a bit of a bridge then. So, when you were doing your undergrad in psychology, did you think that marketing was going to be where you might go? Or did you have different ideas altogether?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was just talking about this with someone a few days ago. No, I didn't have any idea about marketing. Is I actually studied psychology because initially I wanted to do nursing or get into the medical field, but then I realized that I was not passionate enough about it to dedicate that much time. As we all know, it takes a couple years. So instead, I'm like, okay, let me do psychology and still get that BSc or like some science knowledge. Maybe I can go into med school for something. And as throughout my undergrad, it just transformed that I just like people, and I was more interested, to be honest, in production and photography than sciences. And then it wasn't until I was completing my undergrad and I started to think about what am I actually doing after that marketing came up. And it was more like psychology doesn't really get you a degree out of university. You need to do a postgrad or something else to work in that field. And
Got it.
I personally felt that I would ideally like to be a psychotherapist, but I just felt like this time in my life, I feel like I have more energy to put into something that doesn't feel so grounded. I feel like a psychotherapist job is a very grounded job. And I just feel like I have a lot of energy right now. So I prayed about it for a while, and then I felt like marketing was the right step to take because I already had background in photography, in project management for production, like film and stuff, and just like a lot of leadership experience in other volunteer work that I've done. So it just felt like a natural thing to do.
Now, do you find, because there's a fair amount of psychology in marketing, do you find that what you're doing in your work now is drawing on some of that psychology background?
It is. So I think I should dive into a little more of what I do because, when you say you work in marketing, it sounds like, oh, you're doing the thing. Everyone has a different idea of what marketing is, and there's so many,
Sure.
there's so many like different sides of marketing.
You're
And
bringing me
I,
back. I was actually going to go off my script because I wanted to talk about this, but then tell us about your specific slice of what your marketing lens is all about.
Yeah. So as an account executive, I say that title is basically a glorified project manager. Like that's what that title is. I basically see from that every campaign from start to finish to make sure the client brief is met, like the expectations are met from the briefing stage to the actual execution and what we produce in studio, like the creative work. Um, I am I have a lot of administrative roles from a day to day, so scheduling meetings, leading meetings, like leading, again, project management. So leading people, making sure timelines are met, creating timelines, tracking costs and expenses, tracking budget, and communicating. So I'm the in between the internal teams and client. So I'm client facing. So there's a lot of back and forth there, and communicating expectations on both ends. So if we have a timeline to meet, or deadline rather, and we can't meet it internally, communicating that. So like there's a lot of in between and back and forth I have to do. A lot of administrative work, a lot more than I thought it would be.
Got it.
But also the account executive, this is on the lower tier. So the next step would be like a supervisor. But I'm also supposed to keep in mind the strategy behind what we're doing, not as much as a strategist. So because FCB it is quite a bigger organization, it's not a boutique agency. There are more specialized roles. So we have strategy teams and that are assigned to each campaign. So I don't have to carry on that lens all the time. I'm also not a creative, like I'm a creative in my personal life, but like they're creatives that we hire. They're copywriters. So everything is pretty segmented. I'm making sure that things look good going out to client, and that our teams are keeping on track with timelines and the brief in summary.
So one thing with larger agencies, you talk about the levels. Sometimes they also have an account coordinator, which I understand tends to be the first. So is there an account coordinator, or in this case, is account executive kind of the first level, as it were? There's a lot of account jargon in client service and agency side, I guess, depending how big they are.
It's a good question. The client that I work on, no, we don't have account coordinators. I'll be the first step. But there's some other clients that FCB has that they are account coordinators. I don't know what determines it. Maybe the size of the client. I don't know. But yeah, I'm the first step. I think probably if there was a coordinator, my role and their role is combined at this point.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit more about FCB. So it's one of the larger agencies. There's talk about networks and all of this. So what's it like in this big advertising agency specifically?
Yeah. So it's my first agency role. Before this, I mostly worked even before my program at George Brown, I mostly just worked for like retail or whatever. So this is like my actual first marketing role, and I ended up in a big agency. So it's hard to compare it to anything else. But what I would say, coming from working for like, I don't know, a retail company or a smaller, I did work for my internship. I did work for like a smaller, publishing company. Anyway, it was a very weird time in my life. But the difference is it is like it feels big, but our team feels small and close. So the client we work on is a bank. So we are like a team of, I think, 6 of us, 2 account executives, 2 supervisors, 2 group account directors, and like 1 director. So it feels like within that team, I feel like, oh, I know my people really well, and we have a good like working relationship, and we are friends too. But FCB is pretty big. Like we work on so many other clients that sometimes I learn about it every other week. I'm like, oh, we do that too? I didn't know that.
Of course, okay.
You know what I mean? So it can feel like, oh, I know my people very well within this client, but like it's not always that you would know what else like the agency is putting out in terms of other clients. Now they do a good job of like doing all staffs, which is weekly. When there's like big campaigns and for other clients, they do a good job of like talking about it agency wide. Like, hey, this is what we're doing on Sobeys, which is one of the clients. This is what we're doing on Lotomax. I think we still have them. So yeah, they do a good job of publicizing those. But yeah, it feels like what I would say, compared to what I've heard from other people that work for big agencies, I think FCB does a great job of like making you feel like you're part of something. Like, I don't want to use the word family because that can have its own thing that is not positive.
Sure.
But
yeah,
you're part of a collective of people that are good at what they do and are dedicated to their work. Like you feel proud to
Oh,
be there. Yeah. And
awesome.
you don't feel like you're not valued. Like at least within my team, the
Yeah.
clients that we work on, I feel very valued by my manager and I feel like I have a place there and I'm making a meaningful contribution.
So,
So yeah.
so you've
Mhm.
got this team of 7, and you work on one client as
Mhm.
well. So it's very like we've had folks from agencies of different sizes, and when some of them who go even larger, they work on multiple, and smaller boutique tends to be multiple clients versus you're talking about this, your roles are quite segmented within FCB and you focus on a client, and like
Yeah.
it's all very, it's small within this bigger place on all sides,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think the higher you go with the roles, the more they may dip into a different client. So I know our director, I mean, she was solely with the client I'm on, but then now she's also helping with a different client. But when you're in the smaller roles, like this client is one of the bigger ones that FCB has, so it's much more solid. But I have heard about other account executives or coordinators that may work on two clients, depending on how big that is.
Got it.
So it's not, yeah.
So maybe not to look too far ahead, but like for you, if you assume you wanted to stay at FCB, what could you move to? Would it be a supervisor, or is it on another client, different industry, different challenges, different types of work? Like where could it go as the next thing?
It would be a supervisor if it's like, oh, maybe I really am not feeling the account, like the client facing, and I was interested in something more internal. There are roles within the same client or on a different client that I could say, oh, maybe if they have an opening. But if I want to stay with the same client, I can go one role up to supervisor.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's bring it back down to now. One of the things that is doing a little bit of looking, and I've seen some of your recent posts on LinkedIn. There seems to be a fair amount of award-winning work coming out of FCB. What's it like? What's it like working on some of this work? Can you kind of tell us about things you've worked on, or I don't know, just like I don't know what it's all about, because like awards, again, they seem good and everything, but yeah, tell us about the award-winning work that you all are doing.
Yeah, I'm all about being very transparent. So I would say that the one award-winning work that I've been on, it almost feels like I wasn't really on it because it started before I got into FCB, and then I have contributed to parts of it, but
That's
I wasn't
fair.
there from the beginning, which is fine. I will own it. I put work. I put work. So I've only really been part of one award-winning. Well, you know what? That's technically not true, but that's beside the point. It feels good to say the least, but there's so many. That's the thing about the bigger agency, that there's so many parts to it. Like okay, yeah, I did the administrative work at some point. Maybe I scheduled some meetings. Maybe I took contact reports and moved things along and delivered things. But like, there's someone else doing strategy, and there's someone else doing the creative, and like sometimes I personally have find it hard to see my place in it. Like, oh yeah, I really did this. I'm part of the success of this thing. Um, is what I would say. But I have to remind myself that even if it was just like me for like staying on a stream for 3 hours on a Thursday night, just making sure the stream went well for this campaign, it is still work that went towards a campaign, and that's why it's a success. So it's very much a group effort. So it feels great, but it's so much a group effort. It's sometimes hard to even see where I find my place in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've worked agency side before, and like client services, and in client service, and it's like the creative folks tend to get more of the spotlight, and client service, we're like you're like air traffic control and making sure everything all works, and
Yeah.
on the backside, but you're not necessarily kind of as visible there, but without your contribution, like it all falls apart.
It really does. And what to
So,
me is
and it's
self-important, but
vital.
yeah.
Like, I don't want to make light of it, but it's like, it's super important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And you know what though? Like again, the teams are so great where when those wins happen and they post about it, because most of the posts you see on LinkedIn, I reposted it. They tag me. And the fact that they remembered that, yeah, the accounts people helped is so important. It makes me feel good.
totally, that's awesome. Okay, that's really nice to hear, right? Like
Mhm.
that they would do that. Is there, so maybe you worked on it, or maybe you didn't, but it was there. Is there a favorite bit of work that won awards at FCB that you have?
Yes. Yes, there is. No, top of my head, of course, you know about next. Well, I'm assuming, but there's something called Next Level, BMO Next Level. Well, BMO is the client I work on. I don't think it's a secret because I post about it anyway.
Okay.
um, but but yeah, BMO Next Level is like this gaming and finance collab that they launched in 2022. So it's what has won a lot of awards in the recent years, even in Cannes. And I wasn't part of it when it started because I wasn't at FCB yet. But then when I came in, I helped with the fall, like the in between season one and season two, which is still in the works. So we basically like helped keep Next Level top of mind after season one, just to keep it, in people's minds, make sure that the streams are still going. So the gaming relations specialist, which is Sean Frame for BMO, he streams every week and every Thursday, and he streams and he also teaches or answers questions about financial literacy in different ways. So question like each stream would have a theme. That let's say this week is about student finances or how to save for school. So during the stream, he will be streaming, and then he'll be talking about saving for your education and loans and whatever it is and answering questions. He's quite talented at it. I don't know how he came off top that way, but he's really good and he keeps people entertained.
So I
um,
haven't heard or seen this program, this campaign yet, but I'll take a look.
mhm.
But so he's streaming, talking about financial literacy, playing different like game,
Games.
not
Hmm.
financial literacy games.
Nope.
Oh,
No, he's playing like adventure games. I'm not a gaming girl, but like one of the games he's played, I think it's called Valorant,
yeah,
and he's played Fortnite. And there's another game that he's played. But yeah, he plays like adventure games / building games, things that are safe for work and banks.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, right. But how did do you know, like just kind of going down this path a little bit more, like how did they make the connection with him and like, hey, do you want to work with BMO and talk about like financial literacy? Is any part of his sphere financial literacy, or they just knew he had
It's a
this
funny
audience
story.
connection?
Yeah, it's a funny story. And again, it's happened before I came in. So this is me telling it as like third party, is what I've heard. He actually used to work as like a teller at BMO. Like, I don't know if it's a teller but he used to work in the bank. He used to work in one of the branches as, one of the people that I think he handled like the mortgages or something like that, like a very specific department. And I think they were looking for a gaming relations specialist for this campaign, and they put the call out there internally to see if anyone would be willing to do it. And he's one of the people that applied, and he auditioned, and he got it. And now it's an actual formal role for him. Like he's a gaming relations specialist for BMO. And that's how it happened. Like he plays games, and he used to work in the bank. So now it's combined. It's a pretty cool gig for him, I'll say.
Yeah, that's a gaming relations specialist. I love that. Like, talk about titles that didn't exist a few years ago, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what's on your mind about marketing right now, or what keeps you up at night.
Huh. When I saw this question, I thought to myself, well, what keeps me up at night about marketing?
Because you
No,
think about it all the time, right?
I know. And maybe I should have added this as my self intro. I wouldn't say that I keep my work and personal separate because I would say I spend a lot of hours working, but like it doesn't inform my identity in a lot of ways. So um I when I'm thinking about growth, I'm not always necessarily thinking about marketing specifically. I'm just thinking about how do I grow, for example, my photography business? How do I get better at time management so that I can do my job well? But I'm not always thinking like, oh, marketing is something that really boggles my mind. Now, I did think about the question a little bit, and something that always comes up for me when I'm working on campaigns is like, in the grand scheme of things, what does this really matter? and and it's outside a specific like client or project. It's like sometimes I think like I think at some point I may want to work in a smaller scale for things that really make a difference or make an impact. Not that, BMO campaigns don't. They do have like they have some really cool campaigns that tell the stories of small business owners. And that's something so something else I should say is that I within BMO, I work on specific line of businesses. I work on the business banking, the B2B, and some personal banking stuff in Canada. So I first started with the B2B and BB stuff. And that really is my heart because I'm a small business owner. um, so we tell stories of small businesses or just like businesses in Canada that are not large corporations. And we've done some work that are just really personal and like human. So that's something I do love about BMO is that they tell human stories and it's not just like this big financial institution. It's like it comes down to why does this matter to me? So on the business banking side, I really enjoy that. But like I can see in maybe in a few years thinking, okay, I may want to work in something that has like impact on an even smaller scale,
Mhm.
or it may be a bigger scale, but like very practical impact. Like, oh, well, I'm able to, I don't know, get a house because
Yep.
of this community thing, like something more community based, maybe. But those are just my thoughts right now. Yeah.
I feel like that's like totally fair. Like, what impact is this having from that perspective? So um, I I I love that it's a different answer than we've had before, and we're recording this in 2023, and pretty much everybody's answer to this question is AI, which gets tired here. I'm tired of listening to it, so I love your answer because it's totally different. But yeah, the impact and delivering impact
Hmm.
with what we do. Marketing can be a force for good, as well as you just it can be a force for all of the things. So
Yeah.
if you want to drive impact, I think that's it's a nice message to share to folks who might want to be getting into marketing as well. That yeah, what's the impact you're
Yeah.
making?
But yeah, I also have to say that I mean there are other things that okay, it hasn't kept me up at night, like the AI thing. Funny enough, just
I didn't
last
want to
week.
go there though. I was like,
It's okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna go too deep, but like just
okay,
last week in our all staff, like one of the another account executive actually for a different campaign, she did a presentation about how AI can help our jobs. So like about how we can help accounts people because I've always thought okay, I know AI is happening, and there are other impacts actually in the industry of like, or maybe clients cutting back on budget and they're trying to use AI to supplement things, which is not always, great for us. But as an accounts person, she went through some useful AI tools that we can use to make our jobs a little easier. So that is what I'm looking. I'm trying to make my life easier. Like, if I can use AI to do that, I'm fine.
yeah,
um. So, but it doesn't keep me up at night now.
got it. Nice. Now I didn't pick up on this, but I don't want to kind of let it go. So you said you're a small business owner yourself. Tell us
Yes, I
about
am.
that other piece of the work that you do.
Yeah, so I right now I have a photography business or like a very small media company, very small. And actually this year it's been a little bit on a pause because it's my first year one, working full time in a
It's
new
hard.
industry. It is hard. So it's been a lot, like a huge learning curve for me in my work life. So I've had to take a step back a little bit because I just couldn't manage all of it. But yeah, I am a photographer, and I specialize in portrait photography and family photography. And the future that I like, if I want it to do more in the future, I want to like create spaces for people to intern and learn how to do photo work and to like make means for themselves. But I just really love capturing humans. Like, I love the creative process of doing that. And maybe in the future, I would also have a marketing piece to it. Like, I enjoy branding. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at it, but the few friends that I've spoken to that maybe are also trying to start a business and they ask me a question about, oh, what do I think about, how do they show up online or whatever it is, I'm like training my strategy brain to think about those things holistically. And I really enjoy like, how do you want to present yourself as a brand out there? Who are you? Making a voice and creating a kind of like strategy plan for people. Yeah, that's like a side thing that I haven't talked about a lot.
Yeah. Are you do you have a plate, like if someone's interested, do we have a link that you want to share in like
Yeah.
the show notes and stuff, or you're like I'm not doing that as much right now.
I'll
So
share it. I'll share it. I'll share
okay,
my
awesome.
Instagram and I'll share my website. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we'll love to, for what it's worth, get it out there. And if folks want to see your work and your photography talent, then yeah, we'll
Yeah.
happily share that. Do you find that um, is there any overlap with your FCB work, or no, they're really separate, and it's like you had mentioned, you really want to kind of keep them
No,
separate at this point?
there's a lot of overlap. Well, when I say separate, like at the end of the day, you're one person, and you're gonna do things are gonna bleed into each other in some ways. If
Yeah.
I wanted to really keep my personal and business separate, I would be doing retail, and retail has no overlap. And when I say retail, I mean like working in a store as a as like a salesperson or whatever, which I've done for a couple of years. Anyway, there is overlap. So part of my job is, I would say, proofing creative work, so video,
Oh,
photo work,
okay. Yeah.
producing. They're
Yeah.
they're actually people hired to proof it, but I'm the last point of contact before it goes to the media team, and goes out into the world. So I have to be very detail oriented, like very. um, so I'm like proofing by with a copy deck and making sure what's in the copy deck is reflected in the creative. And it's sometimes it can be very simple work. Sometimes it's like you're doing it for maybe, I don't know, hundreds of assets, to be quite honest. So from my photography days, it definitely crosses over because I have to be detail oriented in what I do in editing. It also has given me an eye, like my photography has given me an eye for the proofing because I know
Yeah.
what to look for. The creative team usually are the ones that point out, oh, creatively, what's the creative direction for this piece of creative? But there's sometimes when maybe something maybe missed. I'm like, oh, I don't think that's right. I think this needs to be a little. Is this color warm enough? Or I think this can align better. So there's definitely crossover there. And then from marketing into my photography, my job has really helped me be more organized in my photography work. Like if you are an entrepreneur that just does things with your own timeline, being in a very structured place where you have to follow multiple timelines for different people forces you to be organized and learn how to prioritize things. So it's really helped me in that area, and it does spill over into my photography. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I think I don't want to lose that point about the proofing, because it's like an important last line of before things go out, like in some cases, and probably working with a bigger bank, like there's fair amounts of money on the line, so the
Mm-hmm.
detail focus is important. Like when you started talking about it, that just gave me flashbacks to my time, and you like you it's critical, and it's an important aspect for anybody who might want to get into client service, and this responsibility for being the last person to look at something, the first person if something maybe didn't work out, is an important part of that of the role.
It is, and there's been like in the very recent past something that maybe shouldn't have gone out. Like it was okay in from our perspective, but then times changed, like the political times then shifted, and that creative didn't really fit into
Okay.
the current political situation. And not because it was wildly offensive, but just like very little nuances, right? That just a change of something in the political atmosphere gives it a whole different interpretation. So like at that point we had to be quick with, oh, get it out. We gotta remove it immediately. So yeah,
Yep.
I mean, sometimes some things are missed, but there's so many levels of checks
Yeah.
that it shouldn't happen often.
I think the key is the level of detail. Like you need to be detail oriented in the role, which is it's a big part of it. Okay, so Danny, let's shift to getting to your day one, and your job search journey. So first off, what attracted you to advertising or this role specifically?
What attracted me to marketing specifically was the potential for my creative and my administrative brain to come together. I really wanted to do something that used both, because when it's just the one, like if it's just, photography, it's great and it really engages me, but sometimes I lose structure. And my brain is structured. Like I recognize that I needed both. So marketing and advertising really brings that together in a neat way. It has different layers. It can go to the strategy route. It gives you so many options. You can go to the strategy route. You can go to the media route. You can go to the creative route. You can go to the accounts route. And it just kind of gives me a lot of layers, like, oh, if I'm getting tired of one thing, maybe I can explore this one. That's kind of how my brain thinks in long term. So I just felt like it would give me a lot of options. That's what attracted me here.
And so when you were going through the job search, talk us through that. How did you get the job?
Yeah, whenever I tell this, I have to caveat that it's really a combination of, I'm Christian and I'm very like I'm religious and spiritual. It's a combination of grace, timing, and luck, and preparedness. It's a combination of all the things.
Grace,
It's
timing,
not.
luck, preparedness. Okay, go talk to us.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I knew that I wanted to do marketing, so I looked for a program that was digital marketing and not too long because I didn't want to spend a lot of money. But I also made sure the program had a work experience, because that's something I did not do in my undergrad, and I would do that differently. So that's a preparedness part of it. Is that okay? This is the thing I want, and this is how it's going to get me there. I I made sure I really showed up in school. Like, even though it was online, I wanted to know that I was connecting with my course mates, with my professors, because I needed that network. And it was during the pandemic and I was not seeing people in person. So I wanted to make sure that I got out with someone knowing my name and having good network. um, and then moving into like even all the projects and assignments that we got in school, like in undergrad, I wouldn't say that I was the best student by any stretch of the imagination. There are things that I learned that I don't remember. But for my 1 year, I remember saying that I want to leave feeling like I know what I'm doing and I'm set up. So I had to go in with a lot of intentionality. And then into my internship, the same thing. But in terms of the job search, like I would say that George Brown made it easier with their platform, finding internship. Like I don't recall what it's called, but like the platform when they have the job postings. Um, there's that, but a huge help was actually the network that I built with my professors. I call them professors, but is it instructor? Is that the correct word? You and
Yeah, your instructors, your professors, it's
instructors.
fine.
Yeah. Anyway, those relationships really played a huge part because coming out of my internship, even during my internship, I needed actual paying work. And I remember it was one of my professors that connected me to the George Brown team, like the TLX, and I got a job through that. And it was the same professor that actually connected me to FCB.
Okay.
So yeah, and he knew someone, he had worked with someone in FCB, and they were hiring at that point, and they sent him like the job description, and he sent it to me, and I'm like, okay, I'll apply. So I went in through as a referral. When I say I would have never, like, FCB was not even on my radar. At that point,
Sure.
I was just applying to different other things. I didn't know it was there. So then I applied through that referral, and by the grace of God, I got it.
Awesome. So, you know, you know what? I think you explained it perfectly well. I like how the 4 points all came together, and I feel like part of one of the roots there is making an effort. If most of the folks, if you're kind of working towards your day one, and you're in some sort of school, make an effort to I don't want to use the word make an effort to kind of be known somehow. It doesn't necessarily have to be the loudest, or the always answering. There's many ways to do it. You can send emails, you can interact on LinkedIn to things, you can do it through the assignments that you do. There's different ways to make yourself noticed. Just take advantage of the opportunities there, because it seems like that helped with the referral piece, which is it makes the job search,
It made it
it could make it a bit easier.
Yeah, it did. And I would say to that is like, it wasn't just in my undergrad, like it wasn't just in my postgrad, but even undergrad. If I'm contributing something, I want it to be meaningful. Like, I'm not going to say something when I don't have anything to say. But if there is space to say something, I want to make sure my contribution is meaningful. Or even if, like, in group work, especially in group work in the pandemic online, you have to really motivate yourself to do the thing and do it well. And I would say that it's easy to not do it well. So just try to do it well. It will get you noticed in a good way.
So do you think that, you mentioned doing group work online in the pandemic, and sort of putting in the effort, taking the pandemic away, do you think it's trickier to do group work or get that motivation online versus if you were like on campus? Do you think that the delivery mode has a part of it, or no? Was it really the pandemic that got us all kind of?
I actually thought it was easier online. I thought it took a level of logistics out of it that sometimes makes group work very annoying and hard to do. So, like, oh, you want to meet up? Where do we meet? What time of the day? Because you have to be there in person. Sure. But when it's online, it's like, oh, okay, fine, I'm in my friend's house, but I can do it now. And also, even presentations, it was a great hack to be able to see my script on my screen and present, versus trying to memorize it and present in front of people. I think that took a lot of like stress off my shoulders. So I personally think it was easier. Someone else might say something different though.
Yep, that's fair. So in terms of the job search, was there, like, what was the hardest part of it? You make it sound so easy, but what do you think was what was tricky? You made it sound easy. What was the hardest part?
The hardest part was believing in myself and selling myself well. That I had a huge challenge with that, like self-confidence, because going into the program, I remember being in classes with people that had worked for like Siemens or what's this other big company, like had worked for all these like big companies for years, because maybe they're older, but they had some experience under their belt. But I felt like, well, I just graduated my undergrad. I've only really done these kinds of like retail jobs, the customer service, and I had other experience, but it was all kind of volunteer. So I didn't know how to like take that and sell it in a way that felt convincing and like could convince me that I knew what I was doing, or that I could learn a new, like, even if it's not exactly what I'm doing in this job, but I could take that skill and then apply here. You know what I mean? Like it just
Totally.
I had a huge time with like self-confidence and believing that I could do the thing and applying well. And that's something that I got some help with when I worked for the TLX. Some teachers helped me actually edit my resume, and they were very helpful with that. I'm like, who better to do it than people that have been doing it for years? So
Yeah.
they helped me with that and to sell myself a little better, but it was self-confidence.
So aside from, so you got some of the help from others on the resume specifically, but how did you kind of work through that for yourself as you went through the job search?
Practically, I had to really talk positive to myself that, okay, looking at a job description. So I actually signed up for, I don't know if you know these websites that help you put together resumes, but they give you like you put in what the role is, and then it gives you all these suggestions as to, oh, these are the kind of key points to put in different areas. So like it just
Okay, I
helps.
haven't seen that.
It helps the process. 100% recommend. I think one is called resume builder or something. Anyway,
Right.
I have to say because it helped me a lot.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
it breaks the ice of, oh, I don't know how to say this thing I'm trying to say in my resume. So that's a very practical way, and it also helped me, like, what's the word? It helped me kind of mold each resume for the position I was applying to quicker, because that's something that can discourage you when you have to do that all the time. So that's a practical tip. The other part is just like just getting more experience in any way that I could. So I did, like, first of all, I had the internship that was unpaid, but I also had like a very small paid part-time work with a startup company. It wasn't fun. It wasn't that much fun at that point. But I'm like, I need to do this thing to know that I can do it. Like I had to really challenge myself and put myself in the battlefield to say that, okay, I can learn the thing. So that when I'm selling it in an interview, I know that I've done it.
Yep.
So that was just more so like putting myself out there in that way. And then again, I am a spiritual person. I really did a lot of prayer just to like help build my self confidence up. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever make it sound easy because it wasn't easy.
There's always things, sometimes like time duration takes different amounts, but there's always parts of it that that kind of stick with us, and it's different for different folks.
Yeah. And you know what, if you don't mind if I add something, I
course
would
not.
say don't be afraid to do the dirty work. And when I say dirty work, I'm not saying that you should stay in a place where people treat you like crap. I just mean that don't be afraid to do the thing that you may not really enjoy doing, but it will train you for the thing that you want to do. One thing I don't enjoy doing is social media management. I learned that the hard way. But for me to learn that, I actually have to do it. And then I was like, I don't like it, but I know how to do it, and I can apply the skill somewhere else. So yeah, don't be afraid to do dirty work.
Yep. I think that's a nice tip. And even if someone is in their first year, there's going to, I think a couple of folks have mentioned it, there's going to be parts of every job that you don't like, but at least you try it, you know what you don't like, so you can maybe try to minimize that in the future, but you can come from it from a place of experience, and you can at least kind of talk about it. So that's fair.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So another typical job interview question: what's a brand or an organization you think does good marketing? Or like, what's your favorite brand?
Would it be bad if I said one of the ones that FCB does?
No, it doesn't have to be. It's
I'm so bad at this because I see the thing, but then I forget I've seen it, and I'm not very great with names. But I would say BMO does do good marketing. BMO really does. When I was applying to FCB and I didn't know that much about it, it was BMO campaigns that I first looked at to know what they do and what their popular work is. And I'll say they do good marketing compared to a lot of other banks.
Why do you think that what makes them stand out to you compared to the other banks? And I guess, sorry, I should assume for folks listening, this BMO is one of the big banks based in Canada. I guess they have some international presence, but it's one of the big banks in Canada for someone who might be living elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, fair. one thing they do really well is, again, they have a really human approach to it. It doesn't feel like, here's a product, do the thing, or come to the bank and we'll help you out. That's all. It feels like, oh, we know your struggles, and they put a humorous tone to it, and it's very intentional from behind the scenes. It is very intentional, but there's humor to it. Like, they have a lot of products, but like, I don't know. Do you know Lamorne? He's this actor. Anyway, he's the face of some of the BMO products.
Is he like on the BMO right now in 2023? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done a couple of those. So it just has a humorous approach to it, and like, it's very human. It feels like you would want to watch the ad when you see it. Yeah, that's personally why I really like our stuff. What's another brand? I'm blanking right now. We also work on Sobeys. Sobeys Viola. Is how you say it? It's like a branch of Sobeys.
Like the delivery service or whatever.
Yeah,
I think I see the trucks. Yeah. Okay.
That one. We also work on that. I personally just love how vibrant the marketing is for that one. It speaks really true to how Sobeys want to portray themselves. And I think it's just very consistent. Right now, that's all in my brain at this point.
That's all right. Like recency is good. If it's something stands out right now and it's a subtle plug to work that you're doing or a part of, then that's totally fair. All right. So Danny, let's start to bring this together with some things you've learned along the way. So another question that you might face in an interview is, tell us about a mistake that you might have made in your year one. And what was the situation? We've all been there. Could be a small mistake or whatever. They're all, at the end of the day, they're all small. But what was the mistake?
There's so many of them. One thing about doing something you haven't done before, or like having a steep learning curve, is you really have to have a lot of grace for yourself because you will make a lot of mistakes, and you have to, because you don't know what you're doing and you're learning it as you go. I would say a mistake that I've made is like, I don't know, not keeping I'm trying to pick one because there's so many. One would be, let's say, client communications. Now that is a whole muscle to work by itself. Like learning how to phrase things and use language as client facing versus internal, and like versus personal. Like
right, right.
The way I would speak to my coworkers or my friends is quite different from how I would actually speak to a client on email. So email communications was a huge learning curve for me, and like how to organize an email well, a contact report, or just a regular email. How to make it that the point, like how to be concise and provide context. So there are times when I've sent an email that doesn't really give a lot of context to what I'm saying, or maybe sounds a little spicy or rude, but not intentionally, because that was just how I would communicate it. So I've had to kind of learn how to tweak my language a little bit, and it's still a muscle that I'm working. It takes, like, you have to remove yourself out of your day-to-day, and like, how will I phrase this email? I think I should really look into AI to see how I can help myself with that, because it takes a lot of brain space.
Yeah, you know what? I totally this past year, I did that same thing. I've worked a little bit more than you, and like this stuff happens. But yeah, you know what? It's like, I feel like sometimes it's like, maybe it's like the whole don't press send right away. Like, I know you have this volume, but like type it and maybe like, okay, give me 5 minutes, put it in draft, and then open it and read it again. Cause I hear you on that mistake. Like,
yeah, totally. That's a big huge one. One of my supervisors, she taught me how to like set your Outlook email so that when you hit send, it takes like 10 seconds before it actually sends it. So you still can go back and cancel it and then do the thing. I still need to like make sure I take some time to read the draft a few times before I send it out, but that's a weak point for me. And I would even say I've actually even called the client the wrong name. Because the different client representatives for different line of businesses, I've called her like the wrong name. So anyway, it happens.
Got it. Yeah. I need to know about that, the 10-second email thing, because I have not heard of that yet. So I will have to let me know that after. So what's an important lesson that you've learned in your year one to share with someone who's maybe just getting started?
I've learned a few things, but what I would say is, again, about having grace for yourself as you learn, and being organized. And if you're not like a accounts person, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but I think it matters in different areas of life. Um, a huge thing I've learned is just how to be more organized in my life and how to prioritize. I have an amazing manager that really taught me how to prioritize, it was a very simple principle, like the way she taught me. But it's like if you don't know it, it would blow your mind if you're someone that does things like on the fly. But it's really helped me like structure my day and my week better, so that I'm not feeling like nothing is getting done, but I need to do everything all the time and I'm stressed. So learning how to prioritize my tasks and my jobs and timelines is an important lesson that I've learned.
And this is my next one. But what did your boss say? What was their tip for doing this?
Okay. So one advice. So
I want to know this because it's like you said, like do everything everywhere all at once, and I struggle with that a little bit. So yeah, what was your boss?
I don't remember what she called it, but I call it the big three, the medium five, and there's a different word like the easy whatever, things that are like, oh, we can get done some other time. So the big threes are the big three things that are urgent and important for that day. And she told me that not everything that's urgent, not everything that's important is urgent. Most times, if it is urgent, it is both important and urgent. But you need to know how to differentiate those two things. And even when other things come to your lap from other people, doesn't make it urgent because it's urgent for them. So knowing what is urgent and important is huge. But then also setting like, okay, what are the big three things I need to do today? Then what are the medium fives? And then whatever else can take some time. So it really changes on a day-to-day basis. There are times when I'm like, okay, today I know what I'm going to do. These are the important things. And then something comes out of the blue and then it becomes urgent and it's important. And then I have to and then knowing when to ask for help or communicating your capacity. That's something I'm still working at. Like, oh, you know what? There's a lot on my plate right now. I don't think I'm able to get through this today. I need help, so that things don't balls don't fall out of place, you know? So yeah, that's what it is. That's how she taught it to me.
Awesome. That's helpful. I do something similar to that, especially like the main three things for the day, and then the other stuff that's not necessarily for that day or a bit less focused. But I love that you shared that tip to help organize the day and then kind of towards the week a little bit longer term.
And it helps to just write it down, because then if not everything is floating in your head and it just feels like, oh, what is it? But when you write it down, it's like, oh, okay, that is the thing. I don't have to worry about that right now. Yeah,
totally. Daniella, it was wonderful to chat with you. So thanks so much for investing your time with Year One community. Now, before we wrap up, let folks know where they can find out more about you, see your professional self and your side work self and what you're sharing online. So what are the best ways to find that out?
My professional self really stays on LinkedIn. I think my name on LinkedIn is Daniella Okezie or Danny Okezie. You can just search my full name. Instagram is more of a personal, but you can find me at Danny_097. And then my photography account is OKZ Media. So OKZ Media on Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll make sure those are in the show notes. So remember, friends, getting a job, any job, isn't necessarily easy. There's different paths to it. Referrals definitely help. So lay the foundation for those early. And there's definitely a role out there for you. And with good folks like Danny and myself, we're here to help you get it. So thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.